little bit of a time constraints as well. We don't want to keep you any longer than what you've already allocated for your time. So definitely there's going to be a lot of content, but I will make sure to be able to share what I'm actually going to be presenting here with you later on through the kind intervention of Francisco. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I am a community strategy consultant. I work for myself. I am also one of the founding partners of a company called Talent Led, which I've founded with fellow community consultant Todd Nilsson. It is the only one that I know, the only community consultancy that is focused on talent communities. And for myself, I'm a bit of an aficionado of developer communities. I've cut my teeth managing developer communities at Google, and of course, brand communities and things like innovation and future of work. They're all in my realm in a way. And in collaboration with Ledby Community and Dear Francisco, I'm going to be presenting to you a segue to a session that I did last year at CMX Summit. So that was actually titled, Starting Community Consultancy, Find Your Niche, Set and Go. And it was probably, for a number of reasons, the very first ever session that was completely focused on community consultancy. So you're here, I presume and believe that you would like to learn a little bit more and go deeper. And this is what we're going to do today. So without further ado, let's do, this is a song, a cover from Metallica. If anybody's into rock, this was called The Crash Course in Brain Surgery. It was actually a song by a band called Budgie. So that's why I put it here. We're just going to do a little bit of a recap of what we actually talked about in the last session at the CMX Summit. Of course, we're not going to go through the entire session, just a bit of an introduction, just a bit of a warm-up. Maybe you remember this slide if you've looked at my presentation over there. This was a lot of consultants are being treated or they're being seen as modern snake oil sellers of the 18th and the 19th century at the time of the gold rush. So there was this sort of salespeople. They were selling snake oil as as a remedy to all sorts of conditions that you might actually experience, health-wise. Of course, it's not, a fix-for-all thing, but it became a metaphor for the consultants because some of them were delivering, great value. Some of them are delivering not so great value. And of course, and unfortunately, many of us are being tarred with the same brush, and we're called modern snake oil sellers because of course, this little section of community consultants or consultants in general, having some, dubious, delivery situation. Anyhow, this is how I wanted to start, and I'm going to come back to that later on in the presentation. So I would like to continue a little bit more. If you've just entered the field of consultancy, community consultancy, whatever, maybe just the definition is a great place to start and get us warmed up in the in the matter. So I did say last time around, consultancy is an exchange of advisory value. It's, to be honest with you, by and large, generally, it's nothing else. It's to formulate, ask right questions, and to analyze what's happening on the ground, making the other party aware of an issue and opportunity that is connected, of course, to the situation on the ground, not, something that, happens just out of nowhere. And of course, to design and recommend an appropriate approach and or solution. To be honest with you, not much else. And anything else actually, in my book anyway, is not exactly a management consultancy. So if you're a permanent consultant, I don't know, maybe you have a different view, but consultancy is usually a temporary assignment. You're like a deus ex machina. You just come in, you just fix something that no one else can actually fix, and then you leave. And if you become an executive or an operational manager, then the expectations change, your KPIs change, a lot of things change, and you have a much longer term involvement and longer term expectations from yourself and of course the company that you work for. So what we do normally as consultants, we generally recommend, suggest improvements or solutions. We don't usually execute them. Some do, some don't, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. But I personally see it as a temporary advisory role. And this is a bit of a big sin in the consultancy book, in my opinion. If it turns into a sales role, then of course your expectations, your focus changes, and then you're going to be able to see, if you're as if you were you're holding a hammer, you're going to start seeing everything as a nail. So you're going to be trying to sell everything or sell whatever you're selling to in any situation, which is a no-no, because consultancy is providing custom solutions to one-off problems in a way. So anyway, let's get that out of the way. So I did say last time around there were 5 basic requirements of a consultant. We sort of know this already because it's all common sense. We would like to have some experience. Of course, if you don't, then you're not really believable, aren't you? And of course, affinity and competence with analysis needs and requirements cycle is important. You need to have the right network of professionals, resources, people, providers, all sorts of other stakeholders to consult and support. There's no way you can actually do something alone, and it's in your interest. We're going to come to that. And the appropriate and flexible corporate structure in place. You're a freelancer, contractor, company setup, fractional. We're going to talk a little bit more about those as well. But you're able to offer some sort of an engagement methods for the clients. So if you don't, and if you're stubborn about just one certain method of consultancy or method of engagement, then of course you're missing out on a lot of things. And of course, the common denominator for all the stuff is lots of patience. So this is again, a fast recap of the points that I talked about at that presentation. The niche, narrow and deep area of experience. I hope everything is going on and is going okay in the background. There's some fair bit of noise, but whatever's happening, definitely. I wish the best for you. I hope nothing untoward is going on. Anyway, it's important to find your niche so that you can actually obtain an unfair advantage. Find and concentrate on a niche is a great way to ensure credibility and to create or expand a line of business. And we're going to come to the niche bit in a bit. And of course, you need to make good use of your previous experiences, the industries that you worked, because there's a community for pretty much everything. And it actually is a great opportunity for you to, this is a great opportunity for you to exploit your, your previous experiences and then turn them into a consultancy advantage. If you have hobbies, personal affinities, a lot of, different facets to yourself, definitely consider using those in setting up a niche. Step 2, once the niche is there, then you set up your services and processes, focus on a narrow set of services, make sure that your deliverables are document-based. They are all, they are mostly at least tied up to a certain methodology or an approach so that you have some flexibility. You have some structure behind your delivery, which is going to make things much easier for you. And then standardize and time processes and deliverables as quick as possible so that you actually have a little bit of an arrangement, the possibility of viewing and understanding and organizing your deliveries accordingly. And of course, once you standardize them and you try and test them, it's advisable to move from time-based billing to delivery-based billing. These are the things that we're going to go a little bit deeper today. And step 3 is to have a brand presence and network. You have your niche, you have your, your services. So it's important for you to get out there and then basically market yourself. So have an online presence on social media, up-to-date, consistent one is great. Provide thought leadership. Many of us do anyway. This is, part of other things as well. Or this actual piece of advice as well, for me anyway. Network and collaborate with fellow consultants, great. And of course, it's important for you to adopt an approach where you identify and adding potential clients and stakeholders all the time. And of course, just like now, you invest in time and energy to participate in select events as a speaker and contributor. A few of us are going to be in Prague next week for the Community Rebellion Conference as well. And of course, there's a few more on the horizon. It's great to be able to, attend these and, just make it part of your, your brand and presence. So step 4, the last step, set customer and prospect outreach strategy. Everything else is set. It's important for you to find customers, find work, leverage your existing network. We'll come to that. Every company can benefit from a community. It's sort of connected to what I've said. There's a community for everything. Have an anchor client, have a few clients, starting up and helping you in your journey, and certainly enter communities and collectives of clients and generally pass on projects, big or small, that you cannot commit to the favorable return. That's another thing that I'm going to be repeating, for a few times later on in the presentation. So this was something that you already knew, or you may have already heard about because you maybe watch the presentation live or the recording. So now these are the things that I'm going to be adding on. So this is the segue bit. So hopefully you will like, and make sure you write down the questions, because I'm going to just go through what I've got, and certainly happy to answer the questions that you might have on any of the points that I'm going to be talking to you about. So these are sort of compiled from the questions, the feedback, all the other things that actually came to me after the presentation at the CMX Summit. So a lot of people had trouble finding niche, and of course it's a very standard trouble. There's a lot of research that goes into the right niche, or the niche that can actually generate any sort of value for yourself. But here's a few things that worked for me. I cannot guarantee that they can work for you, but they are great starting points for you to organize your own strategy in finding your niche. So just like fashion and technology, I found that the trends and opportunities follow the investments. Common sense, but we tend to forget this. Interest of companies, organizations, and subsequently profits that they're making or they're thinking of making. And usually these directions are usually set ahead of public release. And I would say definitely, if I was you, during the search, I would develop a habit of following the developments in various industries to try and follow the actions of car ahead of the car in front. This is a sort of a traffic analogy. So don't follow, just follow the car in front of you, in case they brake or, accelerate or whatever, but follow the traffic and follow all the cars ahead of it, so that you can actually have ample time to react. So this is sort of the same thing. So it's important for you to follow what is happening, and then basically change direction or adopt a direction before everybody else does. So I think this is the hidden gem, and this is the key. And then you can go develop competency in presses in niches, and then select your niche, or whatever you want to do with it. So here's an example from one vertical. I tried to refrain from AI, generative AI. I'm going to be talking a little bit about it later on, but example from just one vertical, one traditional vertical: automobiles, automotive, whatever you want to call it. So Volkswagen, now the biggest car manufacturer in the world, I think they surpassed Toyota. They're investing in a new auto strategy. That's the name of the strategy, which is very imaginative, I guess, new auto strategy. But this is the link that you may be able to follow later on. And the company will eventually become a software provider through Accelerate Strategy. So weren't these guys, producing cars? It turned out that Volkswagen has decided that they're going to be the biggest automobile software provider on the planet. And they have earmarked 16 billion euros for investment in the future trends of e-mobility, hybridization, and digitalization up to 2025, which is not that far away. So if you put two and two together, it's now sparks start to fly in brains, hopefully. And then, there's going to be a lot of needs and interesting opportunities for communities, of course, for cars, for developers, developing these, these platforms, these pieces of software. And clients, of course, they're going to be a software provider. So that means that they're going to be selling, what they're going to be producing to other manufacturers as well, big and small. So basically, there's a lot of opportunities just from one, piece of news about a strategy for not that far away in the future. So that's just one example that you can follow, and then you can set up your niche, whether you are that interested or not that interested. For example, in this case, in this example that I've just told you, if you've led developer communities, it's very easy to use your skills and then basically transfer your skills in managing, leading, growing developer communities for this particular organization, for this particular effort. And if you're there on the first mover advantage, there's every opportunity that this project might be associated with you. Just one thing. Another thing is a regulation change niche created. We live in Europe, we are world leaders in regulation, so to speak. In some other markets, it's much freer. But regulatory changes actually bring projects and niches, and they force companies to focus, adapt, and invest. and look to tap into communities of practice, partner organizations, and talent. So, of course, with the regulation change, there's a lot of exploratory ground and an adaptation period, and communities can play a great role in these. So different markets, countries, and blocks like the European Union will harbor different and distinct niche opportunities. So again, wherever you're based, take advantage of those. So tap into conversations and connections, find the right people around you, and exploit related barriers to entry. Sometimes they work in your favor. Something seems impenetrable as a market, but if you have a possibility of being able to be present in that particular market, in that particular ecosystem, use that to your advantage, and you do your proper homework to be able to take advantage of being present in that particular ecosystem discussions, to be able to take up community projects accordingly. So that's another thing that I can recommend you. So some regulatory areas to keep your ear on the ground. So, of course, we have the privacy, GDPR, whatever. It changes every day. Sustainability, I was actually told this is a hot topic. So we have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals, the 2030 agenda. Why this is important is very important because every single company on the planet is actually either trying to conform to this, or they are trying to appear to conform to this. And then they're using a lot of community work in the interim in doing that. So legal ramifications of technology developments, of course, things like remote work, tax and immigration, those are sort of gray areas where not a lot of things have been figured out, and a lot of communities are around these concepts. Mergers, acquisitions, and corporate governance, new ways of leading companies, like companies with no levels, with no hierarchy, DAOs, and Web3 companies, and all sorts of other things. They all need some sort of community injection in order to progress to the next stage in their life cycle. And of course, as of June 2023, if anybody has watched Google's Sundar Pichai's IO keynote, AI, generative AI, there's so many repeating things. So the new things, the new developments in artificial intelligence and all sorts of ramifications that come with it are just prime areas to keep your ear on the ground for possible community projects and strategies and everything. So here's a little intermission. The infamous project management triangle. A lot of questions are being asked, and people are still, not getting this right most of the time. So I used to be a project management trainer, so it's important for me to reiterate this. So this is the very basics of project management 101. Sometimes people don't get this right, just because they don't know for whatever reason. But most of the time, the clients or some sort of stakeholder is deliberately, just approaching this the other way to get this shape to their advantage. Allow me to elaborate. So this is your project. So the project is a triangle of time, budget, and scope. So basically, why is it a triangle? Because a triangle is a rigid and a fixed structure. And basically, if you are trying to change something, meaning that, if you, for example, would like to change the scope of a project, then at least one more side of this particular shape has to change. That's how we used to teach, project management in a way. So this is very important because, you cannot have a project with a bigger scope, with the same budget, with the same time. One of these has to change. And so hopefully this image will stay with you as, you're approaching projects, or a client or some stakeholder is trying to wear you down in terms of negotiations by, not adhering to the geometrical constraints of this particular shape. So scope. I love scope because it's the start of a project, and a lot of people sort of miss that. The project's not so hidden gem, and here's the more on the project management basics. That any good project starts with scope and not with budget. The reason why I'm telling you this is because a lot of negotiations start with budget. I have X amount of dollars, and can we organize a community with this particular budget? To be honest with you, it has to work the other way around, because it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to be able to, to figure out how much, how much output you're going to be generating with a certain amount of money, or whether you're going to be able to, finish all the items of a scope. It has to start the other way around. And if you let the grip on scope go, if you haven't, fixed it, if you haven't figured it out at the outset, then you will not be able to control the other variables, so the time and the budget. So the project will start running away from you. So again, as I've said here, it's the massive Achilles heel of the projects or consultancy proposals or negotiations, as many start from budgets, which is not very good. And the standardization of a deliverable, which I'm going to come to later on, it starts with the scope and the scoping process. So it's important for you to align the scope. If you don't, put a great scope down that is going to be fixed, that is going to be repeatable, that is going to be repeatable and reusable for every client or every project as a turnkey assignment, then it's not going to be able to be standardized. So insist on being in charge of scope. Don't say that, I would like to, just do this engagement with you, so you decide on what you would like me to do, and then I get this fixed amount of money or give you this fixed amount of time, and then basically we're all going to be happy together. It's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of tears, blood and sweat, whatever. So I don't know if anybody knows this. I studied Latin in high school, 4 years of, absolute toil. But, it turns out that in 2023, I was able to use at least a little bit of that knowledge. So omnia mutantur et nos mutamuris in illis is a very cool word or saying. It means everything changes and we change with them. It's from the King Lothar I, from the very, very, very old times, even older than me, which, a lot of people don't believe that people existed. So construct, agree, and standardize a project changes mechanism. So this was a saying about changes, and this is something that many people omit. So the project changes means that, once you organize a scope, set a scope, shake hands, then the change mechanism, if you want to change something in the project, if you want to add, subtract, modify, whatever you want to do, it has to be tied up to a very, very rigid mechanism. Why? Because if you change the scope, we joke in the developer world, why don't you add just a button onto that screen? It will take you just 2 minutes, but it's not that easy, and it's not that simple. So the change in scope will have time and budget implications and vice versa. So we call this scope creep in the project management world, which means that, scope starts to run away. There's going to be like new things piled on top of the scope. And don't leave the setup, or don't leave the management of all this into the other party, the change mechanism, because it may not be favorable for you. Insist on installation of your own change mechanism to have full control on the delivery. This is another thing that I will tell a little bit more about today. Make sure that you are in control of your project and consultancy activity delivery. Don't leave the control to the other party, because then you can ensure the quality and everything else that you're actually promising the client. So make sure you agree on a turnaround time. Again, common sense, a lot of people completely omit. So as consultants, or as, let's say, would-be breadwinners, so to speak, we get very, very enthused, especially in your first projects, that somebody is interested in working with us, and then we try and we start to completely omit these steps, and then when the time comes to utilize these mechanisms, they're not there. So this is something that you really need to install in the beginning. So don't do the mistakes that I did. That's why I'm making this presentation. Turnaround time is basically you ask something. You want this thing to be done in a certain amount of time, a reply to a change request, or an approval to, a change, or whatever it is. Make sure that you have a communication plan in tow. And it's important for the client to agree that there's implications if they go over, the agreed turnaround time, unless, of course, there are, some emergency, situations. So let's shift gears and let's go to the second act, which is the ways to engage clients. Hope you like this, because it's a bit of a summary of ways of client engagement. You may know already all this, but there are people who don't know, or maybe just they don't know the intricacies, and I'm going to try and see if I can convey the experience that I actually have with them. So you have things like one-off consultancy engagements per hour, retainer, pay for work, pay for access, and of course per deliverable engagement. So what do these mean? Let's fly through them. So one-off consultancy engagement, as the the name suggests, is the most basic exchange of value between consultant and client, namely provision of a one-off consultancy service in exchange of usually an hourly. Of course, it's not just 1 hour, but you need to be able to specify a unit of a fixed fee. So most suitable for passing clients. My wife is a nutritionist, dietitian. They refer it in the businesses, just people looking up and just seeing the sign, nutrition advice or whatever it is, and then people just going in on the whim, starting a nutrition plan, lose weight, gain weight, whatever it is. So it's a bit. It's really good for people who just want to sort of try your services, get acquainted with you, or initial engagement because you don't know what's happening in the next step. Could be part of a wider engagement structure, but don't have it for your entire project involving retainers and deliverable base. Could be used both before and after a possible project to add things like maintenance or to finish up things that weren't quite finished. It comes with the least stability in terms of engagement and cash flow because, of course, you just you are at the hands of the mercy of the client who decides on the spot to engage with you, and then, of course, they may actually disappear after. So let's step it up. Per hour or per time consultancy engagements, what are they? They're generic name for trading time for dollars. It's the provision of services within a predetermined time in lieu of compensation. This is like by far the most common. Per consultancy hour is, of course, what we try and charge or what, people expect you to charge, but it's also possible to see per day, per working day, 8 hours or whatever, and week, 40 hours, never 40 hours in the Mediterranean where I am, engagements. So it's also possible to see these units. As long as it corresponds to a unit, it's repeatable, it's scalable, and so on. So when do we use these things? They're usually deployed in a commercial relationship that has been established. So there's a bit of a trust, bit of a relationship, and it is part of I underlined this, forgot to underline that, drawn out, scoped and budgeted project engagement. So it's important not to tie yourself down on a per hour or this sort of arrangements if there is no predictability in your project. So you need to consider it with care. It's easy to get carried away with per hours. The client wants to have that sort of flexibility. They want to tie you in a very bleak arrangement most of the time. I'm painting a dim view of the client, but of course very few of them are like this. But I'm just just giving you a hypothetical case of sort of the worst case, so to speak, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of different interesting parties in your consultancy career. So if that happens, this may not leave room for business development and other more predictable methods of engagement, which are of course things like retainer, which is a fixed amount of compensation that the client pays for a certain period of time for your services. And I love this, the access to you. So basically, if you're able to market yourself as a consultant with a retainer fee just for an access to you, then you sort of made it in a way, in my eye anyway. Retainers are a great way of establishing and deepening commercial relationships with clients, and of course, establishing trust and adding predictability to your business because, of course, you get paid every month or every whatever period. There are two ways: pay for work, pay for access. So the pay for work is the most common one. It's working hours, it's service against, working hour services against money, retainer fee basically. So it's like, 10 hours a week, 10 hours a month. It just goes on. It's very popular, and clients prefer the fee for guaranteeing the consultant's time and efforts. Again, I'm going to be tying this up to my conversation about, about scope. If you don't have a scope and if you've committed to this, then of course you have, let's say, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever you've agreed, and with no indication of what you're going to do. So as you can see, this is already a very dangerous and very thin ice. And it's important to be able to, have all the indicators basically with you when you are, engaging in this sort of retainer arrangement. It's a good engagement option to mitigate risks of open-ended engagements and to get compensated in line with the effort. If it's an open-ended engagement, it's a good thing that you may wish to do because, of course, you have this sort of ongoing period and you get paid every time the period elapses. Great way for new consultants to get acquainted with retainer structure, establish a brand, and establish a working relationship. It's good for everyone, but of course not for that long. But the downside is the chunk of working hours will be allocated to the client. This, again, as I said, this may become an issue without clear scope, or further down the consultancy experience where, the client wants you to do something, you've promised them 10 hours, but you're getting better at your craft and it takes you 5 hours, then you're both left twiddling your thumbs and then scrambling for things to do, which is, again, very thin and very dangerous ice. Pay for access. I love this. Client pays for accessing you. If you're in the top of a mountain, you are a guru of sorts where everybody reveres. Of course, it's not the case, but there are lots of conversations around, pay for access, retainer, consultancy engagements. It's not that uncommon. Your knowledge, experience, and expertise as a consultant is important. It's a very advanced way of consulting. I just put a ha there. As it indicate my preference, as it does not rely on the consultant providing actual work in lieu of compensation. They're just there. The arrangement is there for you to be present when something goes wrong or when they need your input for a strategic work or whatever. So it's a bit of an interesting arrangement, but it requires, of course, a lot of trust. A lot of deep, consultants with a deep brand presence. So, and basically, it's the most difficult stage to achieve in terms of the retainer consultancy engagements. So, and of course, it actually needs you to strive to become and remain as one of the experts and the best value providers in their industry or niche to be able to demand this type of retainer work. So you need to be on top of your game all the time. So, again, another one of my favorite deliverable-based consultancy engagements. I really am not that keen, or at least, I would like to go over the acquaintancy phase to go to a deliverable-based consultancy engagement. It actually means client pays for each deliverable. I want a community strategy, X amount of money, you've standardized your work, I want it by this time, and then basically you just deliver it in, and nobody cares, how long it took you to make it. So, of course, in the beginning, it will take you a long time, but as you get more acquainted with your standardized work, it will actually take you a shorter time. And that's why for experienced consultants, or as you gain more experience, it's just great. So it could be documents, events, training, awareness sessions, presentations, workshop, recommendations, whatever. It's if you can actually package it as a deliverable and standardize it, it's possible to be able to deliver it in this sort of guise and fashion. It's engaged way of engaging more clients, more haha, and is more suitable for engagements with a certain level of confidence and expertise in delivery, of course. It's a great way of managing and adjusting bandwidth, but requires an excellent level of process standardization. That's why I'm going on and on and on about it. You need to be great at your commitments, and you need to be an absolute killer on keeping to deadlines, and you need to be, so the client has to trust you. And of course, they need to hear that you've been excellent in doing these from your previous, arrangements as well. Because I'll say this more than once: the clients do talk amongst each other, which is another thing that we sort of omit. What's a healthy mix? According to Consultant Success, this is something that I've found on the internet. 13% of consultants use the retainer model, but it has to be much higher. It depends on industry, a lot of other things. It will vary according to your strategy and the work that's out there. But most of the time, the consultants forget to factor in the time and effort required for continuing sustainable business development. Again, I'll just say this more than once. Because business development, finding new projects are not is not considered as value generating or dollar generating, so to speak, activity. Most of the time we tend to omit, but to be honest with you, that has to be the most protected part of our day or activities, because without new projects, there's no way you can have any sort of flexibility, and you're completely tied to your existing projects and so on. So this is my suggestion. A selection of anchor clients providing predictable retail work, 30% of your available time. Half of the time, this is very aggressive, but this is sort of what I do. I try and protect half of my all available time thinking, dreaming, just completely boring myself out about new projects and new ways of doing things, because it's important to be able to do things that other people haven't thought about before. This is what I believe personally, but it's a hidden necessity. So I try and protect my 50% or anything close to 50%, and the rest is just work that needs to be operationally done. So this is my mix. Of course, it may or may not work for you, but there has to be some business development. Otherwise, you're going backwards very, very quickly. So again, some thoughts. Try and avoid quoting hourly for everything. It's very difficult in the beginning. It's important to be in control of the effort that you provide for maximum efficiency and flexibility. So as you get better and better in providing services, try and draw back on hourly. Again, my recommendation. Predictable, standardized, tried and tested work, delivery-based quotes and proposals is the way to go, in my opinion. And unpredictable, ad hoc, one-off discovery, exploratory awareness, additional maintenance, custom work, then you go for hourly or anything that is more flexible in that sort of compensation and, of course, your effort. So flexibility is key. This is something that I've added last minute, which is important because I think this is quite important stuff. So a lot of clients want you to to engage, but most of the time their hands are tied. So you want to work for them. Maybe there's a full-time consultant work. Of course, it goes against my conversation in the beginning, but maybe you are maybe the company doesn't have the headcount, doesn't have the budget, doesn't have the money that you want to have in lieu of your work. Or sometimes it's a part-time job, is a contract job, is a temporary job, is a maternity leave job, or whatever. But you want more predictability. You want to go full-time, but be flexible. At the end of the day, whatever the method of engagement is, whether you're pursuing a full-time career as a worker, or as a consultant, or as whatever executive, you're actually trading your time against your expertise against dollars. So be flexible. Just being involved in the project is the key thing, is the key achievement, is the project's aim. So the client has the upper hand. Their hands are tied, and in less number of cases, they're not bothered, which actually drives me up the wall. In some markets, people are just really not interested in exploring different ways of, engaging with people. But in any case, be flexible, try and, offer different ways of flexibility. That means that you need to have done your homework and be able to provide, a selection of engagement models. Maybe, just partner with some legal experts to be able to, set up temporary or permanent structures in particular markets, do some cross-border invoicing or, activities or whatever, get some liability insurance and stuff like that. You need to have all these structures before you engage so that you can confidently offer these. So we have something here, it's called a fractional leadership. It's not exactly consulting. It's something that I'm doing. I'm doing a COO, sorry, not COO, CCO. Of course, it's not COO, CCO, Chief Community Officer. The responsibility for a startup here in Turkey, and certainly is a great thing. It means that I'm actually on the board. I'm actually just working as a C-level executive, but not on a full-time basis. So if you are really interested in that sort of fractional leadership work, there's a wonderful community called Fractionals United. I just wanted to drop in there. It's not an endorsement or anything, but I'm part of it, and I'm absolutely loving it. They're not, sort of paying me to drop their name or whatever. Quite the contrary, because I really like that sort of engagement. So I just wanted to let you know, if you like, that you can do something that you can do on the side. Anyway, going back to consultancy, $1 million question, how much to charge? Let's go out on a limb. A lot of people have asked, normally the answer is like, it depends on the project, client, blah, 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 blah. But I just want to give you an indication because a lot of people pressured me to do so. So just generally, I see people just charging something like between $250 to $500 per consultancy hour, just to give you an indication, just to put an anchor in the sea. It depends on the market, though: niche, brand, urgency of solution, relationship with clients, and of course the client's budget, and of course the value that you're going to be generating. You may consider a split reimbursement. It's something that I've done before. Cash and sweat equity, which means shares. So you provide service, they're not paying you, but they're giving you ownership in the company. Could be something that you're interested. Payment terms and cash flow are crucial. You agree, you just go, yes, I have, I don't know, a 6-figure project, but they'll pay you, I don't know, 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line, after they get an investment and stuff like that, and you haven't talked about it. It's not good. So it's important for you to establish that. Some consultants try to charge half the costs upfront, but many reputable companies work on a very, very strict 30-day, whatever, accounts payable structure. So you need to figure those out in the negotiation phase. Preparing packaging standardized deliverables, start with scope, break down the hypothetical projects into steps and support your approach with real data. Assign a resource and time to completion to each step and calculate time and costs. Again, this is project management 101. Start with scope. You know what to do. What am I going to do it with? Whether I'm going to do it myself, or I'm going to get a resource in, or whatever I'm going to use using the program or whatever it is, and then how much I'm going to be paying for this. Whether it's going to be the money that I'm going to, or the hypothetical costs of my hourly wages or time limit wages, or the subcontractor that I'm going to be bringing in, or the tool that I'm going to be using, and then basically you calculate the resource, the costs, and the time to completion. You can use critical path analysis. You can look it up if you haven't used it before, to be able to figure out how long a project will take in the shortest time. And then basically, it's just a suggestion. You don't have to do it this way. Add profit margin, at least 10% contingency. In some markets, add more on overall project to finalize proposal. If, like me, you're in the Mediterranean and you love haggling, probably Neval is laughing. I really don't see her right now, but you need to have a haggling contingency as well if you're in the Mediterranean, because people will just say, even if you quote $10 for $1,000 project, people will say that it's too expensive. So anyway, some things to consider. Try and refrain from itemizing the cost of steps of your package deliverables. Some, let's say, interesting clients want you to do that. They just say it's very interesting. That's a great quote. So can you break it down into steps? And then what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and dissect, get parts out of it, and then try and, subcontract it, or just give it away to, other parties that would be, cheaper for them to, include in the project. Don't do that, or try and resist doing that, because that actually means that you're losing control on the quality and the delivery of your project, which means that you're going to be working with some other stakeholders on which you have zero control of. So basically, try and be aware of this tendency and just don't do it. If the clients say that they have a certain budget, what can you do with this budget? Don't discount your services. Don't deliver a $10,000 project for $5,000, but reduce the scope, the deliverable. Just break it into half. Just if it means if it's an implementation project, let's make it just break it into half and just say you're going to be preparing the strategy, and then they can decide on whether they want to implement it or not. Don't reduce your prices. Don't do that. Just reduce the deliverable so that your services remain intact in terms of value. Never provide a day-by-day, hour-by-hour detailed project plan in the negotiation phase. Why? Because it will get stolen. It will be done by the client or done by somebody else who's going to be, much cheaper, much more convenient for the client to do, most of the time anyway, not that, all of the time. But try and adopt a thick skin in terms of proposals, where you're able to provide an overview, a standardized approach of overview of your services, value proposition, general remarks, and timeline of your approach. These are okay to provide to anyone, and they're actually relatively easy to prepare. And resist any detailing request. If they just say, I've had this situation where I'm doing a proposal, and then they just said, oh, we don't want just a general approach. We just want you to detail every single day, activities of every single day for the next 90 days upon launch of the project. It doesn't work. That will only be done when you engage a client, or when you have a community team, or whatever it is. Just say no. And of course, be consistent with prices of your hourly and package prices, because clients will talk with each other. Don't try and take advantage. It's unethical anyway. And, just don't do anything unethical, because it's no good. It will actually, harm your reputation, so quickly. Then you will have to be able to do something else. Brand and networking. Let's go through what's a personal brand. Of course, we now have services. We now have, everything else. We have our niche and stuff. The personal brand these are the things that came to my mind. in some sort of an order. Word of mouth, best marketing tool ever. No, my reputation precedes me. Some people have said good things about me, and maybe some people said bad things about me. You never know. But, it's the thing that, comes to people's minds. First few results on a search engine, first lines of summary and activity on a professional platform like LinkedIn, personal website testimonials, memberships, recognitions. Now, your video content on YouTube, whatever content you're producing, it doesn't have to be YouTube, channel videos, training courses, fireside chats. So everything that you're producing it constitutes part of your personal brand. People, will actually make an impression of you. Non-video content, stuff that you write, blog posts, interviews, podcasts. These are things that, many of us produce anyhow. And of course, complementary content. This is the cool thing or interesting thing that we need to be wary of. On other media, such social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram. I'm going to come to that. Things to consider. Advisable to choose one platform as main outlet, use others to support generated content. So you just, use like one platform as your main platform. I normally use LinkedIn. If there's anything else, everything, all the other platforms that I'm a member of, they just, come in tow, and they just sort of indicate things that I'm actually sharing on LinkedIn, if any. So pick one or few directions and be consistent with them. Just don't, fire on different, cylinders, areas. The more focused your message is in terms of your niche, in terms of what you deliver, the more potential clients will find with that particular problem and regard you as the first choice to talk to. So it's more likely to do that. So be intentional. First time I've used it this evening. Unchecked utilization of social media is likely to hurt business image. This is something, very difficult to convey because, of course, we all love, just being able to express ourselves. And of course, there's a lot of things about, the freedom of expression, things like, other stuff. But here's the thing. People will actually, form an impression of you, no matter, how you regard things, how, how much importance you give to these sort of flexibility or separation between personal opinions and matter and your business. But don't expect recipients to be able to have the same, let's say, understanding about it. And they will probably not appreciate candor and vulnerability in ways that you expect. So if you're sharing stuff in that regard, bear in mind that some people may actually hold it against your business or your ability to deliver. I know this is a hard pill to swallow, but it's the reality. So if you're actually just doing stuff, just sharing stuff on your personals, it's important to do this with some sort of a care or at least consideration of this point. And of course, have a strong planning and intentionality muscle regarding content. Highlight and refer to other content and creators. They love it, and of course, they return the favor. So some other things to consider: always be connecting, refer without expectations to assignments that you can't handle. I love this because I stand by this. The clients need, any project, any need, any in the world will need to be fulfilled by something or someone. So helping someone that do this brings a lot of advantage. Of course, there's a collaboration, support, gratitude, camaraderie, whatever you want to call it. Professional life is a game of snakes and ladders. I love that. And you never know when you need the same treatment yourself. You will have a contact in a project or organization. If you help someone, just get into a place, who'll be inclined to choose to give you first refusal for future collaboration needs because, people want to work with people who help each other. And it's how the world goes in a way. And of course, the age of linear careers, I love this, is well and truly over. So if you're thinking of being able to, climb any sort of career ladders, the last year actually taught us a lot of, lessons on this. There's every chance to collaborate with fellow consultants in future projects. So help them build expertise in areas that are not your immediate domain, to be able to have a lot of different choices. So basically, just sort of rise together sort of thing, if you know what I mean.